The film opens in a frenzied tunnel-shaped facility filled with screams, gunfire, and explosions, creating an atmosphere of chaos. A man, dressed in a jumpsuit like the others, marked with the number 69, is seen firing at anyone in his path. Meanwhile, the other individuals in jumpsuits, also marked with numbers, begin to attack each other, and individuals in gowns who appear to be doctors. The scene changes, and we are taken into a quiet room where a man in a black suit is sitting in front of a computer, checking the results of the nervous man sitting across the table from him. The suited man addresses Tsui-Hu by name and asks him if he would still like to continue the program. Looking at the man intently, Tsui-Hu adamantly expressed his interest in remaining in the program. Smiling briefly, the man in the suit expresses that he is pleased with Tsu-Hu's answer, explaining that the explosion had wiped out all of their data along with their researchers. He tells him that although their work is unsalvageable, a corporation by the name of Nexus has made a significant breakthrough in their research. Leaning forward, the suited man tells Tsu-Hu that if he has any way to retrieve the data, he would be willing to put the full force of his organization at his disposal. The scene changes, and we are taken to a laboratory where a group of scientists are working together. After years of multiple attempts, the group is excited that they are finally able to make a breakthrough. Xiangdong, one of the scientists, explains that the primate DNA sequence model transmission results indicate a 100% genetic match in both spaces. Happy with their achievement, the director tells them to prepare a report for the board after congratulating them all on a job well done. A few days later, Xia Tian, one of the scientists, is rock climbing in a simulation chamber with her son Dudu and gets a call from the director informing her that their meeting has been moved up. While informing the man on the other line that she would be there as soon as possible, the handle on her son's climbing gear rips out, causing him to fall safely on the protective platform below. Startled, she rushes down to check on the boy who seems completely unharmed. After she makes sure the boy is okay, Xia Tian heads back to the office to give her presentation about the Nexus Hole, a man-made wormhole. Presenting the particle transmitter, she explains that they would be able to send anything to a distinct parallel universe, but they can only bend the black hole an hour and 50 minutes backward in time. Xia Tian ended the meeting by informing their benefactors that they would be ready for live testing in 2 months. Happy with the outcome of the meeting, Xia Tian heads out of the office and to the parking lot. Once she starts her car and begins to drive out, an unknown man jumps over the hood of her car, screaming that he doesn't want to die and that she needs to halt her research. Frightened, Xia Tian refuses to open the door and attempts to drive off, but stops when she sees the man spit up blood all over her car and falls over, dying instantly. Disturbed by the situation, Xia Tian immediately calls the police and finds out that the man has died from a brain hemorrhage. After the traumatic experience, Xia Tian goes home and finds her son asleep in front of the TV, her motherly instincts making her pick him up and holding him close to her. 1 month later, Xia Tian is rushing to her office, while an unknown group of people are executing a covert mission in her building by planting bombs throughout the facility. In the lab, Xia Tian and her colleague are joined by the director, who comments on how exhausted they both look. After a brief and private conversation with the director, who reminds her to spend more time with her son, Xia Tian goes to the lab and receives bad news that the live cells from the chimpanzee they had used for the experiment had suddenly changed their structure. Afraid of doing any more tests before they could confirm the real issue, Xia Tian tells her colleague to inform the director about the issue. As soon as she went back to her office, Xia Tian got a call from her son, who asked her when she would be coming home. While they're playfully talking, the image of her son suddenly goes blank as he drops the phone, and she begins hearing sounds of struggle. Panicking, Xia Tian rushes to her car and begins to drive to her house, still attempting to reach her son over a call. Suddenly, a black girl begins to hit her rear repeatedly until she is boxed off on the highway and shoved into a large truck that is slowly driving in front of her. Inside the truck, a sudden bright light goes off, hiding the identities of all the people inside the car except for the face of her young son, who keeps calling out for her. Holding the boy tight, The man in charge injects him with a device that will kill him if Xia Tian does not bring him all of the information regarding her research, ignoring her protests that the files can only be accessed when 2 of her colleagues are with her and provide identification with their irises. Seeing that the man refuses to see reason, Xia Tian rushes back to her office and is shocked to find Xiangdong dead on the floor, his eyes pulled out of their sockets. Disturbed by the sight, Xia Tian touches Xiangdong's hand and almost collapses when she sees his eye roll toward her in a glass case. While she is contemplating picking it up, she gets a call from her son's kidnapper, threatening to do the same with the director if she doesn't hurry and provide what he has asked for. Grabbing the eye, she rushes toward the director's office and convinces him to let her access the data. Trusting his colleague of 8 years, the director goes through the iris identification process and then leaves after reminding her to delete the login data after she is finished. Once she gains access to the information, Xia Tian grabs the data module and attempts to download all of the information. Suddenly, she begins to hear the alarms go off after an assistant discovers Xiangdong's body she had stuffed into a closet. The security team, who are surprised by the sudden chaos, immediately run prints and discover that Xia Tian was behind the murder. In the data chamber, Xia Tian is confronted by her colleague, who feels sorry for her and tries to protect her from the trigger-happy security team by hiding her. Xia Tian uses the vents to get away from the security team chasing her, only to be awaited by another group at the entrance of the building. Having no other choice, she uses her knowledge of chemicals to combine compounds that explode white dust all over the awaiting brigade. Using the distraction to her advantage, Xia Tian escapes to the roof. While attempting to cross the thin cement roof, Xia Tian loses her balance and falls into the chamber where a large garbage-destroying device is located, forcing her to hold for dear life while the data module sleeps from her fingers and stops frighteningly close to the edge. Crawling carefully, Xia Tian plucks the device before it gets destroyed by the machine. Beating all odds, Xia Tian manages to extract the data safely and brings it to Cui Hu, who had promised to return her child safely to her if she did as she was told. As soon as he makes sure the file is accurate, Cui Hu detonates the bomb he set up in the facility and triggers the device he set in Dudu, killing the young boy instantly. Devastated by her son's death, Xia Tian refuses to be complacent as they take her away to finish her research and cause the car to crash from a cliff. Crawling out of the wreckage, Xia Tian rushes back to the company and witnesses the devastation Cui Hu had caused to her co-workers. Rushing to the time-traveling chamber despite her colleagues' disagreement, Xia Tian activates the machine, which takes her back 2 hours before the traumatizing events. Cui Hu appears in the particle transmission chamber and shocks her colleague by telling him that she has chosen to be a subject because her son died. Calling Xiangdong, she tells him to get out of the lab, but before he has the chance to, the assassin sent to kill him injects him with a sedative and removes his eye. The future Xia Tian arrives at the lab just as the events begin to transpire and forces her past self to sleep by using chloroform. After hiding the bodies, Xia Tian extracts the data and then ambushes Cu Hu's spy, who had been following her the whole time. Rushing toward their meeting place, Xia Tian runs toward the water and threatens to drop the data unless they remove the bomb from the child's neck. Accepting her threat, Cui Hu orders the extraction of the bomb, unaware that Xia Tian has given him an empty module. Once her son is safely in the car, Xia Tian rushes into her car and attempts to escape, but Cui Hu and his men begin to follow her. During the chase, a bullet fired by Cui Hu passes Xia Tian and hits her son, killing him yet again. The scene changes, and Xia Tian wakes up inside the time machine again, attempting another chance at saving her son. Realizing that she wouldn't be able to save him by changing everything again, Xia Tian grabs a car and goes to the pier where Cui Hu shoots her son and crashes her car into his. While she is passed out on the wheel, Xia Tian from the past grabs her son and begins to run away from the deranged man who refuses to give up following her. Before he could catch up to them, Xia Tian grabs her son and leads them to an abandoned building. While they're hiding, Xia Tian notices Cui Hu coming up the stairs and gets frustrated at how the man is always aware of her location. As she is contemplating the situation, her son mentions the watch the director had sent him as a gift and tells her that it was fake. Suspicious, she breaks the watch, which reveals a tracking device inside, clearly showing that her boss was part of her son's kidnapping. Devising a trap for Tsui-hoo, Xia Tian manages to give her and her son some time to escape, but their assailant is unable to get far. Telling her son to run, Xia Tian tries to take on Tsui-hoo, but all her attempts seem in vain. Just as he is about to drag her away, Xia Tian from the future appears with her guns drawn, fearless about shooting herself. Seeing her determination, he pushes her aside and slides down the pole just as his men enter the building, then gives them a direct order to kill both women. After an exhausting battle, Tsui-hoo manages to get her son out, and her future self escapes the gunfire, even though she ends up sustaining an injury on her arm. After going to the hospital to get her son checked, Xia Tian calls her colleague and reveals the director's treachery, which makes the director shoot him. Tending to her fallen friend, Xia Tian asks her boss why he did all this. Looking at her sarcastically, he explains that the board was going to give her credit for all of his work, even though he had sacrificed his family for his research. He tells her that he couldn't let that happen, which was why he wanted to destroy the facility, as well as her life. Aiming the gun at her, he attempts to shoot her, but is stopped by Tsui-hoo, who executes him for being irrelevant. While getting ready to take her away, the future Xia Tian appears seeming ruthless than ever and stabs him in the heart. Before he dies, Tsui-hoo reveals that his program failed because the patients had started to change due to the experiment, which made them aggressive and they had massacred each other. After ending Tsui-hoo's life, future Xia Tian turns her attention to herself, aggressively implying that only one of them could survive. Suddenly, the bombs go off, giving the current Xia Tian enough distraction to attempt an escape. After chasing her through the building, future Xia Tian corners her past self and is ready to end her life, but is stopped by her other self, who has realized that the ones who had gone through the traveling process wouldn't be able to survive long. Telling her to leave, she remains behind in hopes of dying peacefully in the explosion. Before she can destroy the device, she gets a call from her son and is happy that she will be able to speak to him one last time. After hanging up the phone, Xia Tian lets herself fall into the ether as the place completely goes up in flame. The Xia Tian of the right time rushes to the hospital to see her son and holds him close in a loving embrace as soon as she sees him, crying tears of happiness. A year later, Xia Tian and Dudu left their glamorous house and started living in a trailer so she could spend more time with her son, content with a simple life with her child.